right, Algebra 2 students, we are back for another lesson. Today our learning target is I can perform transformations of functions. So we just got done with the key features of functions, and that was our first section. Now we're in section 2, and we're going to talk about transformations of functions. So the first thing we need to talk about is a parent function. So what is a parent function? I've attached to this lesson a sheet of parent functions. If you can go over that, you'll see there are many different parent functions. Depending on the equation and the graph, that's how you know what it is. So this first one, let's look at, this is a constant function. This is where f of x, or you can replace that with y equals a constant. So this would be the constant 4. It's going through 4 there. A linear makes a straight line with a slope. Absolute value makes the V shape, and that's the equation there. Greatest integer, quadratic, cubic, square root, so on. You can look at the sheet on your own. In Algebra 2, for transformations, we'll be using quadratic and absolute value quite a bit. So be familiar with those. So keep that sheet handy so you can refer to it. So let's look at this example here. It says use the absolute value function as an example. So we just went over this. The absolute value parent function would be f of x equals absolute value of x. And the graph looks like a V. And this V has a slope of 1 over 1. So 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, so on. 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. That would be the parent function. Okay, so let's do a little exploration. What happens if you manipulate this equation a little bit? So here's the parent function equation. What happens if you add 2 inside the absolute value? Let's graph it and see. So go to my y equals. To find absolute value, I go to math, and then over to number, and it's the first one at the top. And then I'll type in that x plus 2, close up the parentheses, and I'm ready to graph. Now we notice that the parent function moved over 2 to the left. So when we add something inside our absolute value, that moves it over left and whatever that number is. Okay, let's try if we subtract 2 inside. Change that to subtraction there. And we can see that it moved 2 to the right. Right, let's see what happens when we add 2 outside of the absolute value. Math, number, absolute, just x, close the parentheses, and we're going to add the 2 outside of that absolute. We see it moved up 2. So when you add 2 outside of the absolute value, it moves it up 2. Okay, what if you subtract 2? I bet you can guess what's going to happen here. Moved it down 2. All right, what if we multiply the whole thing by 2? Let's try that. graph. All right, I don't know if you can tell, but the slope changed here. So if I were to graph this, and you know how we went up here, we went up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. This would be up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So it's getting stretched. It's getting skinnier. So we stretched by 2. So our slope changed to 2 over 1. So I bet you can guess what this would do. This would change your slope to up 1 over 2. Let's see, we'll just do this real quick. Change this to 0.5. Oh, it's not gonna let me do that. So I'm gonna go 0.5, math, absolute value, x. Ooh, it got wider, fatter. So this widened by 1/2. So that would be up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, and it goes out like that. Okay? What happens if you make it negative? Let's try that. Graph. It flipped the whole thing upside down. So it flipped, or you could say reflected over the x-axis. Okay, so let's take what we learned here and put it to some success criteria. I'm gonna go over here. So here is your success criteria. Let's kind of summarize what we just discovered. So when you're adding inside, it's moving to the left, whatever that number is, left h units. When you're subtracting inside, it's going to move it to the right, h units, or whatever that number is there. Adding outside, that's going to move it up. And then adding or subtracting outside moves it down. Okay. We're going to save these other two. We did discover down here, but we're going to save the success criteria for tomorrow because I just want us to focus on the translations right here. So the actual parent shape is not changing. It's just moving from side to side or up and down. And then tomorrow we'll look at these other ones. So you were given a worksheet.